Thanks for coming to our session today. Just like a quick introduction, Jason Long from IMI Mobile. I think most of you know IMI Mobile was acquired earlier this year by WebEx, Cisco. And we've been going through that integration work. That's doing really well. But I also have another role as MEF. I sit on the MEF board of directors, helping support Dario and the team. Been involved for many years, and that's going really well. You know, the kind of work we've done the last few years on the sender ID registry and those kind of things is great to add more trust into this ecosystem. And David, about yourself, please.
Yeah, so good afternoon, everybody in the room and everybody online. I'm David Creasy-Benjamin, affectionately known as DCB most of the time, unless I'm talking to anybody about direct carrier billing, and then it gets confusing. But I have a really superb role at IMI. And so the official job title these days is Future Messaging Evangelist. But it means I get to come and have conversations about these new channels, about these emerging use cases, about everything really we've been talking about in the last couple of days. And I now get to take the front foot in terms of education. So going out and talking to brands, talking to our partners, talking to Google, talking to Apple, talking to WhatsApp, and making sure that we are making the best of this omnichannel world, that businesses are aware of the opportunities, and more importantly, how they can action those opportunities.
Okay, great, thank you. So let's go straight into some questions, that's okay. I realise we've probably only got about 20 minutes left, I think. In terms of the recipe cards, we did them earlier this year, but you know, why did we create the recipe cards at all? What's the benefit of them?
So, for me, I think the benefits were twofold. First of all, it's part of MEF's remit to educate. So, you know, the more material we can get out and get online, the more people we can get to understand, the better. But the recipe cards, when we first started talking about them, meant that I could go home, and when my wife asked what I was doing, I said, there you go, that's what RCS is. That's why I talk about it all the time. That's what ABC is. And I can do that with a business, or I can do that with a marketing company, or I can go and do that with any brand. You know, it's a starting point. It's a lovely place to kick off from. Because when you start talking to businesses about messaging, the first one that's going to come up is SMS. And some people will have heard of WhatsApp. Obviously, it's quite popular. I don't use it, but it's quite popular. But when you start talking ABC and you start talking RCS, you get a lot of people glaze over. They don't really know what's available, and they certainly didn't know what it takes to actually join those channels and make use of them. So the recipe cards were designed to start to fill that gap.
Okay, great, thank you. And I guess, so we've done that education piece. Members can download those recipe cards. All of the members can use them when they're talking to enterprises and, you know, add value and understanding for their own internal teams as well as their customers.
Yes.
So why are we revisiting them now?
Well, much as I'd love to think that they'd educated the entire world in 6 months, not quite. So they are still an incredibly valuable resource. But of course, things don't stay the same. You know, even in 6 months of most of us being locked in at home, innovation continues to happen, and the way that we're iterating in these channels, the way, you know, we as IMI and other aggregators that have presented and service providers have demonstrated, we're trying new things. We're trying new... Ooh. Oh, excellent, there we go. We'll click through so you can actually see them now. Go on then. Ooh, terribly large headshot. Here we go. So, as you can see, incredibly straightforward, incredibly simple, the sort of thing that you could leave as a handout should you want to, but it's just a lovely place for people to start. But as I was saying, things change, things improve. Mobile networks start rolling out RCS at even greater pace. So there are things on here that need to change. And you need to make sure that when you're talking about these channels, you can present to the world the reason for doing it. So that's what we wanted to talk about this afternoon. It fits perfectly with the omnichannel topic, so it seemed like the right moment.
Okay, great, thank you. And I guess when things are changing, you talk about that change, you know, and evolution of these channels, there's also, I guess looking at some of the other channels that have been around for a long time in SMS that we all love and trust and,
Yep.
and use every day, there is obviously some erosion in trust in SMS, where there have been some vulnerabilities in the past, or fraudsters have managed to defraud individuals, and that's part of some of the programs that are happening around the world, including Sender ID Registry in the UK. But from these new channels, how can we get trust and portray that to enterprises and consumers that they should be trusted for messaging? I guess, would you trust WhatsApp for your one-time passcode, or, sorry, probably a bad example, but your bank balance or whatever it might be?
If I, as a consumer, choose to, then yes. I think the reason we went with these particular 6 channels, and not to exclude some of the others, each of them have trust built in at the core. So the way that you sign up for them, the way that you go and activate them, and then most importantly, the way the consumer views them. So when an RCS message arrives with the logo, with the tick, you can click on that tick and see who the verification entity is, and it's going to be Google, or particularly in the UK and other networks, it's going to be your network provider. With WhatsApp, those green ticks are quite rare. They're still at the moment not quite as rare as hen's teeth, but they're pretty far. So we're educating people that those ticks really mean this is a trusted channel. And that will only expand. We were talking yesterday, I think up on stage was James and Simeon, and they were talking about we have to make sure that's built in as we move forward. And I think these channels do a terrific job of placing that in front of the consumer. We as an industry, though, of course, need to make sure that those ticks remain the symbol of trust. So making sure that the people that get to send you messages are authorized, are verified, are the right people. And we don't want to open up some of the erosion that we've seen where SMS has had those vulnerabilities.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only way to grow those is to make sure that they are trusted. We don't want them to go the same way as some of the bad press we've seen in SMS. Although even with the bad press, the volumes are still increasing, which is interesting. Lots of use cases there. And I guess when you're using these different channels and you're doing your evangelist role on a day-to-day basis, what kind of questions are people asking you? What are they talking about? What do they want to know about them? Because you can hand them the recipe cards, but they must have hundreds of questions. The most common things,
Hundreds of thousands of questions. But depending on the vertical, first question that always comes up is, can I do a payment? Can I really take a conversation all the way to the point of sale? And that comes up across WhatsApp. Of course, when you talk about Apple Business Chat, or we'll give it its proper name, as we'll talk about in a minute, Apple Messages for Business, that has payments built in. They're like, okay, so if I can do that for iOS, can I do it for Android? Can I do it securely? And the other channels aren't quite in the same space. But there are some really interesting use cases where people have found other ways with a CPaaS platform, with an integration platform above a channel, so aggregating that customer journey out and making sure that you deliver the experience via that channel. So you can take things like my namesake, direct carrier billing. We've seen some wonderful charity use cases where that is the method of taking payment. So when you tap on the chip or when you reply to the message, DCB will take care of the payment. We've seen third-party gateways. I mean, we certainly, IMI, have tried this for a number of customers, that effectively is a URL which breaks you out into a fully secure and compliant payment website, do the payment, and it jumps back in. And because you've got that CPaaS platform above, you can really drive and take advantage of that. You never know, for RCS, Google might release Google Pay, but until that happens, there are these other options that actually, in an omnichannel world where you want to deliver the same experience perfected for that channel, actually have real merit. And of course, if we had the time, we get into talking about open banking and just flipping into the app and taking that, but that's probably a bit of a discussion for another time.
And that process of payment integration, that works quite smoothly using those third-party processes for consumers?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. If you think about the way you can go into a website and you can set up a basket and set up a way to take a payment, then actually, with the right platform driving the conversation, and we've talked a lot about the different omnichannel products and the way that they can deliver these channels out into customers with the right solution. Absolutely.
Okay, great. And so I guess the reason we're here really is, I guess, the evolution of some of these recipe cards. You know, you said there's been quite a lot of change. It keeps moving forwards. Each company putting new features and services in there. Can you talk a little bit about what some of those features are, what the benefits of them are, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked a lot, particularly today in the sessions, about the benefits of rich messaging and why they drive these better interactions, why customers engage with them more, why they drive better outcomes. And a huge amount of it comes down to we're quite lazy. You know, human beings, if we've got a shortcut, we're going to take it. So when you talk to people, it's like, well, let's talk about tapping versus typing. And Robert alluded to one of the use cases that we've seen in the world. Incredibly successful SMS program. Sending a message every month, customer opting in to have their prescription refilled, as it happened. And all they had to do on a regular basis was type YES and hit send. That was it. If they did, prescription gets filled, EBITDA goes up, everybody's happy. So we took that incredibly successful program, and in this instance, we put it into RCS. Changed absolutely nothing except the call to action. So the text was exactly the same, still under 160 characters, but it came from the trusted brand, and instead of typing YES send, put a button underneath that said yes. So from 4 button presses down to 1, doubled the number of people that updated overnight.
That's a lot.
So, you know, the other channels all have those methods built in. You know, we'll talk about some of the improvements from Apple and WhatsApp, but both of them have now got quick links or quick buttons. Those chipsets, that ability to design the conversation so it's entirely intuitive for someone to go and press, it will give you those returns.
So in Apple Business Chat then,
So let's...
You know, what are those key features? What is the change that they've made?
Okay, so let's stop calling it Apple Business Chat. That's the main one.
Sorry.
So over the, I suppose, the last month or so, it has now officially become Apple Messages for Business. I don't find A and B trips off the tongue quite as well as ABC, but it definitely does describe what they want to do with the channel and what they would like your brands to be doing with the channel. It is messaging for business and for businesses to talk to their consumers. So from that point of view, I do think the name change works really, really well. But of course, iOS 15 has just come around the corner, so that has brought some new features directly into the channel. The big one being quick responses. So prior to that, you've got lists and you've got pickers, but you didn't actually just have a button, and they've now gone in. It doesn't work the same way as RCS. Apple have very much done it their own way as ever, but you now have that quick response. And I think the guys from Infobit were up here earlier talking about the benefits of that. Obviously, we can talk about our use case. I know a number of aggregators have brought along those use cases, and it's all about having that button. So it makes a massive difference. There are some other things that they've implemented about making it easier to gather customer data, so with the customer's consent, of course. So they've introduced forms that effectively open up a service where you can create the questions rather than going straight down the channel, open up into the form, and be guided through a process. So it's another design tool, depending on what your use case is, that can actually give the customer a better experience.
Okay, good. And I guess when you look at the recipe card, you know, some of the key things, and it got called cooking time because it was a recipe card.
It did. We are going to push this pun as far as we possibly can, so I can give you some more flavour on the rest of the channels.
Thank you. And so, is it realistic then to have, sorry, I keep wanting to say ABC, Apple Messages for Business live in 3 weeks? Because like with SMS, maybe you're live instantaneously. I know every channel's slightly different, you know.
Yes, it is. So we wouldn't have put the timescales on there if it wasn't. Is it for everybody? Absolutely not. It'll be quicker for some, and it'll be slower for others. There are the things that we talked about, the things that you need to have in place. You know, you do need to have a partner that knows that channel and knows what's required. You know, knows that the initial conversation is always started by the customer. There's a plethora of ways to start that conversation, but it's always started with the customer. You know, it always must have a way for that customer to speak to a real person. You know, so there are some sort of prerequisites that a partner will help you with, that they'll bring to the table, and then you can put that campaign, you can put that conversation live and start talking to your customers. And, you know, the stats we start seeing, people engaging with customer service or even with a chatbot, you know, the consumer rating is sort of 98% satisfied because they discover the channel at the right moment. They discover when they want the service, they can click in and start. And as long as you've designed the experience properly and stuck to the main core of customer service, which is get the customer what they want, how they want, when they want it, you see an absolute tremendous satisfaction rating.
So having the simple buttons of yes and the forms that you were talking about, are they the biggest changes across the channels then?
No.
Okay.
So, not for me, certainly. WhatsApp have introduced it, but they have almost done 180 degrees on one of their policies, which very much changes the use cases that WhatsApp's open for. So previously, when we've talked about it, promotions was not allowed. You could have a conversation with a customer about service. You could talk to them about products they were asking about, but you couldn't send notifications, not months later about things. And they have changed it, and they've changed it subtly after experimenting in Latin America and making sure that customers were comfortable with it and happy with it. They are now allowing promotional messaging. Absolutely the right thing to do. They are explicitly asking you to have the customer opted in to receive this information by WhatsApp. So again, they are absolutely clear they don't want it to be a spam channel. They don't want people getting fed up with talking to businesses. But they do want people to have the right to talk to a business and have that business communicate out to them at the right moment. So that is a huge change for them. And as they've been very, very precise about what they want and what they'll allow. And there are, subject matters and things that it's simply not suitable for. But it does change the footprint. And it is something that more and more businesses, when you go and you talk and you say, well, this channel's great for this channel's great for this, these work well in combination in this sort of thing. They say, okay, well, can I send that via WhatsApp? Vastly more now, the answer will be yes.
And so what kind of other use cases are you seeing then? I know we've spoken about RCS as well, during these couple of days. What sort of new use cases are coming up and I guess being allowed to be processed, where we may have seen maybe restrictions and things maybe in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a number of people have alluded to on this stage that there are restrictions with the different OTT channels. There are some subjects that are allowed, some that aren't. Some companies that are able to sign up, some that aren't. Lots of different reasons. But for RCS, the biggest difference for me now is because it is an operator-driven channel, where an operator is running RCS, they are also writing the policies for RCS. And previously, for SMS, they've been very happy to talk to, say, gaming firms or gambling firms. Under very strict conditions. The customer must be over 18, must be verified, those sorts of things. That is now possible in a rich messaging environment. So I know of the first gambling company to use RCS. I won't name them, but they tried for the first time this year, doing a promotion for their loyalty scheme. They also designed a use case around gambling awareness to make sure you could use that engagement to make sure people were doing things in a responsible way. But that was in the UK. That's a completely new vertical for rich messaging. So there are loads of different people that are really they're putting their toes in the water and they're trying new things. And I think one of the important things of coming and doing events like this and having the recipe cards and talking to businesses is the more examples that we can put out into the world, the better effect that we can put on, or the best effect we can show things off, how they work, why they work, when they should work. It is only going to be of benefit to everybody.
Yeah, that sounds great to get some flexibility as it moves forwards, you know.
That combined with Robert updating BT's penetration to 25% earlier was fantastic. I thought it was only 23, so it's grown again in the last month. I mean, it's the one thing about the operator RCS services, they are pushing on and adding hundreds of thousands of users every month, which makes it fantastic.
So what kind of penetration rate do you think enterprises really want to see then? Sorry, I'm dropping you in, I guess, a little bit on this.
Well, no,
question.
so there
Reasonable?
are enterprises that will do it when you had 5%.
Yeah.
You know, there are firms that are looking for the right way to get their content in front of new consumers. And it is one of the other things that I think RCS brings to the party that some of the others don't, is we're starting to see the emergence of a directory technology. So looking at that default inbox on your phone and having a way in there of discovering businesses directly that have this chat element enabled. You know, and there are tentative steps in the UK of that being released. We know that that's going to grow, and it's going to put content in front of users in a different way. And when you're talking to businesses like that, 5% is fine because it's new eyeballs. Most brands and enterprises perhaps are looking for a little bit more, but when you present them with figures like 5 times the engagement rate, we're well above the number they need to engage. If you can get a 5 times better engagement rate from 20% of your customer base, why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah, they get blown away and the revenue comes
Just
in and away they go. Awesome. So just noticed we were just joined by Tim
carried
on the stage. I think we're running to time at the moment, but I guess before we ask if there's any questions, anything else you wanted to bring up, DCB, around the evolution of the recipe cards and these channels?
I suppose the only thing is to reiterate some of the points we've had over the last couple of days and really to make the plea that we do cooperate as businesses. When we see the operators starting to drive collaboration, to drive reach, the website promoting RCS in Germany is a fabulous example. It's also in English, so if you want to promote it, go and use it far and wide, richmessaging.de, I think. Thomas will correct me on that later. But those kind of initiatives only help to put rich messaging at the forefront of not just brands' minds, or aggregators' minds, or networks' minds, but consumers' minds. You know, we've long talked about rich messaging needing a personality and needing a presence. And, you know, for a consumer to really engage with something, they kind of need to be aware of what it is. Not necessarily a name, not necessarily a particular thing, but to have an awareness that this is a safe, sensible, and great way to engage.
Great, thank you. So, I don't know if anyone's got any questions they would like. Dario, if you, do you mind? Ellie at the back.
Oh dear.
Please.
He's got a very serious face on.
First of all, thanks for a great presentation, and thanks to iMyMobile and MEF for generating these recipe cards. Certainly, all the education that we can help bring to the ecosystem can only be but very helpful. I appreciate all those efforts. A quick question, basically. On the RCS side, so it definitely sounds like as if you compare this year to last year, beginning to make some good strides in the right direction. What do you think are the top 2 things that the industry can do so that if we're sitting here in a year's time, we can talk about doubling that penetration and doubling that success rate?
So, principally, I will agree with Robert from earlier on. The mobile networks cooperating and being able to put out into the market a realistic view of RCS and their growth patterns, the more information that they can share, the better. Because when you sit in front of a company now and say, okay, well, 10 months ago, we were looking at just shy of 10%. Heard this afternoon, it is now 25. It's on course to be 30 by the beginning of next year. And certainly in the UK. And the difference there is it's being run by the operators. They're using the likes of Mavenir, they're using the likes of Google, and they're driving that platform growth, and they're rolling it out. And they've got, I can't wait for it's an opt-out instead of an opt-in. You know, that will make such a massive difference. And it's, you know, great to see the collaboration there to make sure, because by doing it now, that trust isn't going to go away. The fact that it's been verified by an entity that you understand that if you're in any doubt as a consumer, you'll see the tick, you'll click it and say verified by my mobile network or verified by Google. and you'll know to trust it. So collaboration, and the more that they do that with each other and with the businesses, great. The second thing, because you did say top two, and then I'll wrap it up because I can see Derek hurrying away. For me personally, I want to see RCS given a personality. I don't think necessarily it has to be a brand. It doesn't have to be, here's rich messaging for Android, or here is, but it needs to have a consciousness in the mind of the consumer. So we were talking earlier and we said, you know, iMessage is still saying, oh, send me a text. But if you talk to an iPhone user and say, oh, why is that message blue? So, oh, I'm talking to somebody else on an iPhone. Oh, what does that mean? Oh, that's great. I can do this. I can send this sticker. I can make their phone shake when they read their message. And it has an awareness in the consumer's mind, and people that are real, you know, evangelists of it, they'll talk about that. RCS has got some fabulous peer-to-peer features, and it's got features that I'd be demanding of a business that I would, when I talk to them, I don't want to type anymore, I want to tap. So for an Android user, I would love us all somehow, whether that's the networks promoting the fact that they've given this great free peer-to-peer service away, and you can go and use it, or whether we are talking to businesses, your consumers know what this is. And your consumers are going to be going, well, why aren't you using it? And, you know, directories will do some of that, the content sharing, all that sort of thing, but giving it a personality in the mind of the consumer.
I'd like to add a third, actually.
Oh, go on.
Sorry, if you don't mind. I think
he's running over now, not me. Just point that out.
Third one, I think, Ellie, is around building it for scale now. I think the proof of concept, you know, it's proven. It adds value. It really works. RCS is great. But we need to build it for scale, you know. The cooking time we spoke on. How are we going to reduce the cooking time? You know, we shouldn't have 3 weeks. How do we get it down to a day? How do we get it down to an hour? Just like you would do with SMS or another channel. How do you reduce that cooking time? How do we make sure all the processes in the back end are working smoothly with capability checks, with the commercials? All those things need to be built at scale now rather than on a proof of concept basis. You know, we've got customers running day-to-day live campaigns now, and they work really well rather than just one-off projects. Yeah. But yeah, for me, it's scale next.
Okay, well, I think we've got 1 more minute before the next session, so I'm going to ask a question, and you have to answer it quickly. And although it's probably not possible to answer it quickly. In my capacity as features editor for MEF, I played a part in writing and designing these recipe cards.
And changing the name for me.
It's very gratifying to see them in, you know, such big scale. If, for the sake of argument, we were to do some more recipe cards, which would be more commissions for me, which platforms would you like to consider adding?
So the first two that spring to mind for me, selfishly, because they're ones I talk about all the time, are Line and Viber. I think there's a definite case that we start talking about Telegram. I'm not going to pronounce it, but also the Russian version of Facebook Messenger, which I always pronounce incorrectly. But those are the ones, for me, that customers are starting to bring up and ask about. They want to know, you know, what markets they're present in, what kind of penetration, what features they've got. So I think those are the next ones for me. But I thought it would be the other interesting one, I think, Tim, that we should certainly do is video.
Right.
It's not the kind of channel we were thinking about when we originally did these. It is, in an omni-channel world, core to everything that we're going to do. Right. I think we should start looking at how we define that within this context.
Great answer. Well, I hope it happens, not just for a personal gain. So David and Jason, thank you so much for that. That was really enlightening. So let's show our appreciation.